welcome to Learning Music with Pat. On the last segment, we talked a lot about the tuning of instruments, how important it is that these instruments are in pitch. And so I'm going to kind of go over that with you again today. And I brought in a group of instruments, and they're all supposed to be in the key of C. And we'll see how close they come in terms of their accuracy of pitch. And I'm going to start off with the usual recorder, one of them that I use. I have many of them, but this is one that I usually use. And I'm going to play C. And then I'm going to play all the other recorders C to see how close they are in terms of pitch. And what does that mean to music that you're playing? So let me start off with this. This is C. I'll keep getting back to that. This one should be right on. It's black. I rarely have it in here. It basically is the same. This is the first note. Then this one. This is also a first note. Let's see here. I'm going to bring out two. These are made by the same company, and they are not tunable. You can't pull them apart, and they're supposed to be in the key of C. Let's see what happens here. This is pretty much right on. This is high. This is not, it's not in the key of C, but it's supposed to be. Same company, same instrument, and it is sharp by a half to a half step. It sounds like a step to me. In order to play a C, I have to play a B. So therefore, C and B are really a half step if you look at a keyboard. So this is a half step sharp. Let me take a hold of this one right here. Flat. This is really flat, but that's supposed to be in the key of C. Let me try this little green one. Let me compare that with the one I started with. So this is going to be a little flat, about a half step flat. So let me try, I'll try this guy here. I use him a lot for other things. Pretty accurate. So that's in the key of C. Now the rest that I have here well, let me try this first. I think we might be able to do with the flutophone. It's lower, but it's just about pretty much on key, maybe a little off, but not a whole lot. I have the plastics and the metals. I'm going to try this one. This is a C, and it happens to be a sassoto. And the one thing I want to mention about sassotos, penny whistles, any of those instruments that are not recorders but look like recorders, if they do not have a tone hole in the back, and this one doesn't, the penny whistles won't, and I have a group of other ones here that won't. The Shaws won't, and the sweet tones won't. They're going to pitch one step below, but that's all right. You can still play anything in the key of C. You just accommodate that and play one step lower, and you've got it. So this would be the C. It's in the key of C. This is considered to be C. I think what I'm going to have to do to make it a C is I'm going to have to play a D. Because a D is a step above. Why would it work? Well, it works because it pitches too low, so to get it up, I just play it one key up and it's going to match pretty well. So how do I know that for sure? I'll take the instrument I started with. Perfect pitch C. I'll take this one with no tone hole, and it matches as long as I pitch it up. Now what I've done is basically transpose. I've taken an instrument that normally would be too low, and instead of playing the C, which would be too flat, I play it up one step. When I play it up one step, it matches what the recorders are going to do. Because it's one step down, I lift it up. And basically, that's what transposition is. When you transpose, you are playing notes which aren't necessarily the notes that are written, but the notes that will bring the instrument up to pitch with other instruments that are also playing. And that's what you have to do with some of these little ones that don't have a tone hole in the back. So when I do that and play the D, it will match with a C. That's a sassoon. Now here's a Clark's. This Clark is in the key of C, and I'm going to have to do the same thing to pitch it. That's one step up. If I play it down, it's going to be a step or a half a step down. This is a wooden plugged Fipple mouthpiece. It has in it a wooden plug, so it plays softer than the other instruments do that don't have that plug. But it's also a conical because it comes to a point. And it was made in England. It's a Clark's, and actually it is a very nice instrument. But you just got to accommodate the differences and maybe do some transposition to play it to match C, but it's not that hard to do it. Now this one here is also a Clark's, and it's in the key of D. And what I'm going to have to do is pitch it up to make it work. Now, let me see what, I pitched it up some. It doesn't have the range that it needs to have. So I got it pretty much in pitch. It's softer, it's also a conical, comes to a point. It also has a wooden plugged mouthpiece. This is also a Clark's, made in England, and this is in the key of D. The other one that I played that was a Clark's was black in color, and it said it was in the key of C, but you have to jury rig it to make it fit because because it doesn't have a tone hole in the back. Now, let me try, this is a sweet tone. It's made in England. It's a conical, and it has no tone hole in the back. It has a little design in the front. I don't know if you can pick that up or not. I'll just hold it there because there is a little design on the front that's interesting to see. It's red, and it has, yeah, that's coming in. Yeah, that's interesting. It's just a design feature. Let me play this and see if we can get it in pitch. There it is. They're really a lot of fun to play. Then I have two penny whistles. And the penny whistles are cylindrical. And this is in the key of D. It's kind of a brass color. I actually had this in last week, and it has a green plastic top. No tone hole in the back, and we'll see what we can do with that. And there's the C. Now what I've done is I've half-holed the top note. Here's what would be a B if I was playing a recorder. This would be the fingering for the B. And all I do is I haven't taken my finger off, but this I may as well tell you about the half-holing techniques. We use it a lot to bring instruments into pitch. If they're cylindrical, if they're like a recorder instrument, you put your finger up a little bit and you release that hole so you can get a little bit of air through it. It's not covered completely, so a little air goes through it. I'm not doing this business. I'm not making it obvious. Just a little bit of a twist, and then you can get the note in pitch. And this is the D, and this is another one that's also the key of D. And I'm going to do the same thing with it because they're both penny whistles, so I'm assuming it's going to work. This is a silver tone with a blue top. If I lifted the whole finger off, I'd go, and that would be too high. I want the half pitch. The half pitch brings it right back. Now you can do the same thing for recorders. When you do a recorder, you can half hole, and that's how you get your octaves, but you can half hole it in the back. Those instruments didn't have or the last few I played didn't have a tone hole in the back. This has a tone hole in the back. All the recorders do. And in order to get an octave, and it's too bad you can't see it when I'm doing it because I'm playing it, but you just draw the thumb down a little bit, just enough so that you can see a little bit of the top. Not a lot. Nothing's obvious. I'm not flapping my thumb around, but a little bit. And what you're going to do, you're going to get octaves. Now on the D, and I tried to show this to you, I think it was last week or the week before, when you play a low D, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the holes covered, plus the tone hole in the back. And instead of half holing, when you go to the higher D, you lift all your fingers and leave this one on. It's like the middle finger of your left hand. So, and you use your hands basically for balance. Your thumb balances it from the back. Your little fingers can balance it. But there's nothing in terms of the front holes being covered except for that one middle finger. That's the D. The C is when this middle finger is down and the thumb hole is down and closed as well. And then for the D, all you do is lift that thumb hole up, so it's not covered at all. If I want to half hole it, I can get a sharp or a flat. That's how you do it with the half holing. But if I want another note, I have to remove the thumb completely, and then that gives me a whole different note completely. It's not a sharp, it's not a flat, it's a full step. Then when you go to the E, you have to half hole that note and put the E, use the usual E fingerings. Now, if you remember, this is just kind of a review. It's coming to mind, but I may as well show it to you since I have the instrument and I can do it easily here. B, A, G, F, E, D. That's your D. And then when you want your high D, lift all the fingers up except for that finger right there, and also take the thumb off. You don't have to, kind of spring it off. Just pull it down so that the hole is completely shown. And then you've got your D. But when you want the higher note of the E, where you lift the bottom finger up, and then you have to half hole that thumb. You just pull it down so it's half covered. That's what it means, to half hole it. That will take that D and go from a low D, and all I have to do is half hole it to get the upper D. Now, as I've said before, we do exercises, and then I would write all of this stuff out so you'd be able to see it. But what happens if you're out of pitch? Some of these instruments are definitely out of pitch, usually by a half step or maybe a whole step. So I want to show you some charts here. This is a keyboard. Here's your C. Here's your D. If you are going to, if you can kind of scan that in so people can see that, because I want to show that good. Here's your C. If you are up by a half a step, as some of these instruments were, you go to this note, that's a C sharp. If you go flat, then you go down to the B. So most instruments, if they're going to be out of pitch, they're going to be either a half step or a whole step off. This is going to be the C sharp, this is going to be a B. Now I have some charts here to show you. Here's a keyboard. You start with a C, and this is a C, and this is a C, so you really have a 2-octave range. So I've chosen the mid-range. A C, the key of C, has no sharps, it has no flats. But as soon as you go and you flatten it, supposing it's flat, you go to B. Now B is a half a step. How do I know it's a half a step? There's no black note here. If there's a black note, it would be a full step. So here's your C, and we're going to go to B. That's the way the instrument is playing. It is now flat. Now, the key of B happens to be 5 sharps. So it's not at all like C. C is no sharps and no flats. The instrument is flat by a half a step, so it's in the key of B, and it lands you in the key of B, which has 5 sharps. Well, where are the 5 sharps? Well, right here, C, D, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, 5 sharps. And all you're off is by a half a step. That's all you are off, and yet it really changes the key that you're in. Now, supposing that instead of in the key of B, your instrument is sharp, it's going to be right here, and that's the C sharp. So what does that land you? Well, the key of C sharp is 7 sharps. You have sharped every single note in the scale. So let's look at the scale. C sharp, D sharp. I've marked them all out. E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. Every single note is sharp. You've taken the C, the instrument has taken the C, it started in a C, or ends in a C sharp because it's a half step off, it's a half step up, and so therefore you end up with 7 sharps. Now, that's really, really hard to manage, and a recorder can't do it. The recorder can do a lot of things, but it can't manage that. It can play in the key of G, which is 1 sharp. It can play in the key of B flat, of F, which is 1 flat. Why does it make such a difference? Well, in all of your major scales, there's a sequence of whole notes and half notes, and they appear right in order. No matter what note you start on, it has a certain order to it. For example, starting with C, C to D is 1 step. D to E is 1 step. E to F is a half a step. There's no black note there, so it's 1/2 a step. F to G is 1 step. G to A is 1 step. A to B is 1 step. B to C is a half a step because there's no black note there. So you have 2 steps, 1/2 step, 3 steps, 1/2 step. That's the order of sharps when you have a major scale. Now, if you start on different keys, it's going to end up that different keys are going to be sharp or natural, depending upon what note that you start on. But that's the way it is. So even a half a step difference, which doesn't seem like all that much, makes a terrific difference in the key that you're in. The keys that we play on the recorders are a key of C, no sharps and flats, because the melody recorder is made to play that. But you can play in the key of G, which is 1 sharp, in the key of D, which is 2 sharps. And then on the flat side, you can play in the key of F, which is 1 flat. And I can squeak out a B flat, which is 2 flats. It's harder to do, but it's possible. You just have to know how to kind of tweak it a little. So C, G, D, F, and B flat. Those are the ones that the recorder, C melody recorder, can play. And that's important. So if you're off by a little bit, then you're off by a lot. That's why tuning is so important. That's why it's so important. When you buy an instrument, if you don't know instruments, take somebody with you. If you are buying an instrument and you are familiar with instruments, take a recorder or something that's in perfect pitch, that you know is in perfect pitch, and check the pitch and make sure the instrument is right, because you can save yourself a whole lot of grief if you do that. So anyway, I just want to have you get, let's see, watch my time here. I just want to have you get a sense of where you are in terms of tuning, in terms of pitch, how important that is, because it's very, very important. Now, it turns out that some orchestras deliberately pitch their instruments up a few vibrations, maybe not quite a half step. It's very difficult to do that because the natural tendency is going to be a full step or a half step. A half step up would be a sharp, a half step down would be a flat. But they deliberately tune their instruments up a little bit, and the reason is because the higher the pitch, the faster the vibrations, and the faster the vibrations of sound, the more brilliant the tone. So that's what they do. They pitch them up a little bit, and the tone gets a little brighter. Now, some people, some organizations, some orchestras record that way. Not all instruments are tunable. There are some instruments that you cannot tune. They are what they are. And the way, if you want them sharper, is the fact you blow into them a lot more, and the heat of the air going into them will sharpen them a little bit. But once the instrument is as sharp as it can be, you can't do anything about it. You can't make it sharper. If an instrument needs to be flattened a little, all you have to do is pull it out a little, like I did this morning. But if you want it sharper, this is as sharp, this is as short as it can get, because I have all parts of it put together as tight as it can be. I can't push it in anymore, and so therefore that's the limit as to how sharp it's going to get. If I need it sharper, then the only thing I can do is hope that my body heat will warm it up enough to pitch higher, and if it doesn't, then, well, I'm out of luck. I can't do any more than that. There is a lot you can do to tune an instrument, but it's usually pretty simple. Either pull it out to make it longer, the tube longer, and that flattens it a little, or push it in to make it a little bit sharper. But once it's as sharp as it's going to be, once the tube is as small as it's going to be in length, you can't do any more to sharpen it other than playing it and hoping that it raises itself on its own. But it's important. People who sharpen their instruments deliberately, they get a little sharper tone, and it's a little bit more brilliant, and that's what they want. It's hard to do a whole orchestra that way, and I think it's not good either, because for strings, for violins, for guitars, it's going to put an extra strain on the strings. It's going to put an extra strain on the instrument to force it to play what it wouldn't normally play, just to force it up. And of course, you can tighten strings on a piano, and a piano can be deliberately tuned so it's a little tiny bit sharp for the same reason, but I think it's an extra stress on the strings that it shouldn't have to have. It should be A440, and that's it. So I'm going to close it here. I'm about out of time. We'll continue with something else next time. Please join me then.